Hey Kiya,
Hello.
what's going on?
Not much. How are you?
Baruch Hashem. Doing
Feeling
well.
okay?
Yeah,
Okay,
pumped.
good.
Yeah.
Okay. What are we doing here?
We're here to talk about the Parsha. We're here to talk about Judaism, and we're here to have fun.
Yeah, we are. Okay. So, all right, I guess we should tell the people just like a little bit what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I think we talked and we wanted to just kind of provide a platform where just like it's like discussion based conversation.
Yeah.
Like nothing like formal. Of just like
Just here in your apartment. We're just
yeah,
we're
we're
just chilling with the tea and the
literally in our apartment.
yeah.
Exactly. Or yeah, my apartment that I share with my roommate. But yeah, to just kind of talk about on it, really to talk about the value that Judaism could provide outside of just being like super religious.
Right.
You know, because I feel like sometimes there could be this notion that Judaism doesn't have any value outside of being really religious. And even if you are religious, the only value it offers is like self-inflicted pain, and like, and just like, why would anyone want to do that?
Yeah, just
When
restrictions, all like,
yeah, when I feel like um, in reality, these restrictions are kind of could be construed as like freedoms, you know. And I mean, but even before we go there, like I just really think that like it's not so much that these like limitations you see in Judaism are like fear based because like you're so afraid that God is gonna like smite you if you don't
yeah.
follow his thing. And really like a lot of these restrictions are actually like liberations and boundaries that like you can like set on yourself to live like a happier, healthier life. But even before going there
Yeah,
too,
that's pretty
like
deep, huh?
yeah, the point
I'll
of the
ask you about that
podcast,
later.
yeah, the point of the podcast is not to like convince people to become religious. That's like actually not what we're trying to do here at all. It's more like trying to show ourselves even and just like Jews in general, religious or not religious.
You're a normal guy.
Normal
Normal
is a
guy.
stretch for me, but yeah, just to show people that there is a lot more value in Judaism outside of living a religious life. Meaning, like, if you study Torah, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to apply these restrictions to your life. There's so much to learn from the Torah in terms of your relationships with friends, with family, with your significant other, hopefully your wife. We're talking about, and just yeah, like even like business. Not to say to like use Torah for like business purposes, but like just in the sense of like you feel a happier, healthier person, and you have more of a sense of purpose and a sense of clarity
For sure.
in how you're living your life, and
Yeah.
so you feel better about how you bring about your livelihood. You know what I mean? Like just in every regard, like even your relationship with food, your relationship with um material objects.
Yeah.
You know, it all this stuff is talked about in books and 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 books where you could
Like,
spend hundreds of lifetimes like learning them. And there's a value to all of this. I'm speaking a lot. What do you think?
yeah, no, that's for sure. I mean, you walk into any synagogue, any place of of Jewish learning, like you look at the library, like you see there's like tons and tons of, there's plenty to read, and there's an array of topics, and like every aspect can be talked about and brought to like a simple level. That's there's books in so many books in English, that we can all learn from,
Yeah.
and there it talks about everything. There's rabbi doctors that talk about psychology.
Yeah.
There's psychologists that their works are studied by the CIA, right? Like these are regular religious Jews, and their works are being studied by the CIA. Like Dr. Lieberman, right?
Also, yeah,
He has,
for sure.
he comes to speak every once in a while in our area, and he's a funny guy. He's very personable, and it's just and that's how it is. And it doesn't mean that he's a sad person. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that he's like pent up guy that he's going around talking to whoever. He's giving speeches to the masses,
Yeah.
right?
Or that he's unhappy or uneducated.
No, I mean
Or
he's educated
yeah,
as it
yeah,
gets.
it's
Like
as educated as it gets. Exactly.
but that's how it is. And even between the two of us, you know what I mean. You're almost finished with law school,
Yeah.
and you're a religious Jew. I'm hopefully starting law school this year. I'm a pretty religious Jew, hopefully. Yeah. But this is, and that's like the main point of this whole thing, that to show that being a Jew and being a normal life and being a happy life with a happy family and happy kids is totally, they totally coexist.
For sure, for sure. And to like expand upon some of the things you were saying, like how many people do we know that are observant, whether they grew up observant or not, who drive a nice car, who have a Rolex, who
Countless.
have like a lot of money
Yeah.
and whatever, or not that like
No, but like, dude, I
yeah.
mean, the guy's dropping a couple grand on Yom Kippur, like that's not a joke. The guy sitting next to me is wearing he's a religious Jew,
Yeah.
and that's how it is. And he's a happy guy, and he's a religious Jew.
Yeah. So I mean, the reason I brought that up is to say that like, one is that like being 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 in touch with your Judaism and learning and Torah and like seeing the value and all that stuff is not antithetical to materialism, nor is it that like either like you totally shun making like the pursuit of making money and like
Right.
striving in your business and your personal life and all that stuff, and you just become ultra religious and like fanatic, or
You said
like
it better than I could ever
yeah,
have.
yeah, or like it's like one or the other, where you're either like that or you just like don't care at all and like whatever. Like it doesn't have to be like that.
Right.
There are so many people that I know personally, or whether I don't know personally, or both of us know personally or not, that are extremely wealthy but are totally religious,
Right.
or see, even if they're not religious, like see the value in their in Judaism, in the Torah.
That's what I wanted to say. That it's crazy to think that an old book, so to say, right,
Yeah.
thousands of years old. How can it teach all this stuff? And that's the crazy part. It does.
You know what, Shmuel? Let's honestly, like from here, like let's just dive into that.
Yeah.
Let's dive into that, like, because
Talk to me.
yeah, I mean, because listen, like I feel like you hear this all the time, like, oh, what is this book? What value does this have? Like, this is kind of like was written for like people in like a society that is like completely a 180 from like our society, and and just like even some of the practices that you see in it are like barbaric and stuff like that. And listen, I'll be the first to tell you there's an argument for all of these things, in terms of like clearly on paper you can see why people would feel this way,
Yeah.
and nobody should ever tell you that there shouldn't be a discussion about this.
Yeah, we're very open to discussion. I mean, we're here to talk about it.
Yeah.
I'm not here to teach you. You're not here to teach me.
No,
We're
definitely
just a
not.
couple of friends. And we're just here to talk, because I'm not qualified to teach anything. I'm by no means a rabbi. You know what I mean?
If you're not qualified, then I we need to just.
But that's
turn
what we're
this-
here for. We're just friends here to talk,
For sure.
and
For sure.
we're letting in the people into our conversation.
For sure. Yeah. So like to like expand on that, like like I'm of the perspective, and I feel like if you even just truly study history, it doesn't even have to be like from a Jewish perspective, that life has not changed that much from 5,000 years ago.
Elaborate.
Well, okay, I'll elaborate like elaborate, and like we could look this up if we want to. We're pretty legit here.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm just joking. But listen, like for example, we see today's society, right? Just in terms of like openness of um like relations, not for the sake of like procreation, openness with like like um modesty, like in terms of like your body and all these things, and we think like, wow, now is like, this is it, this is the turning point in history, nothing like this has ever existed. But if you look at Greek society, Roman society, Egyptian society, whether it be 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, like respectively, in these periods, there have been tons of periods in history where life has been lived virtually the same way that we are now, like in terms of like parties and like indulgences and like this like kind of like, I don't want to say liberal because that, I feel like that term has been hijacked, but for like
Yeah,
in
yeah,
today's like political society or climate, but just for lack of a better words, like this liberal like mindset of like, we want to just like we want to indulge, as opposed to like prior to our time, it was just everyone, whether Jewish, Christian, Muslim, whatever, was like this like oppressed society that no society in civilization like showed their ankles or like
yeah.
uncovered their hair, and like everyone had this like fear of God, which like many might even are like, and this from like our time's perspective, like this perspective of like unfounded, like just like indoctrinated fear, and so that's one example that I feel like, and I'm sure you could like touch on like um that perspective
No, I
on.
like where you're going with this. Go on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, yeah, that's one example, but then there's a whole argument that can be made as far as like human nature and how that hasn't changed at all. And
Okay.
we haven't even like, I mean, as far as like, we haven't even touched on that so far, like based off our discussion. But that's also another angle. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So
So that's
yeah.
a good, that's and it fits in with the history so far.
In what sense?
That's what that's what you're trying to get at, right? The history hasn't really changed.
Well, so I guess what I'm trying to say is that like this notion that we're living in some liberal society that has never existed on the face of the earth, where there's this just like notion that, oh, like religion and fear of God and kind of like boundaries in terms of like material pursuits and relational pursuits and indulgences and uh and modern society and like sophistication of like philosophy and art and theater and
It's all
movies
that's still
and
there,
like
very
as the,
prominently now.
yeah, no, for sure, but as this notion that like it's never existed.
Oh, of course it is.
But it seems it, it feels like a lot of people have that perspective,
Okay.
that maybe I could be wrong. I feel like I was one of those people that had that perspective. Um, but beyond that, um, yeah, I just think that connecting it back, you really see that it's not something new. And so then you have to ask yourself, does this, that can this still have value for us? Can this be seen from a perspective that maybe like there these notions that like, oh, some of these practices are barbaric, oh, some of these like things, like there's nothing to learn because like this is just like comes from something, but in reality, I don't know, and I feel like you'd be better to like talk about this stuff, like there's so much to learn.
Well, that's a good, it's a good segue because that's exactly what this week's parsha is about, right? We're just starting a new book of the 5 books, right? Bereshit, Shemot, Vayikra, Bamidbar, Dvarim, right? We're up to Vayikra. We're the middle one. Vayikra is by far talking about a lot of sacrifices, and the tabernacle, the Mishkan. It talks about a lot of these stuff. So sometimes in these parshiot, in these chapters, it's kind of like feels like, oh my gosh, like how are we supposed to learn anything from these practices and the sacrifices and the repetitions, and
Mm-hmm.
it kind of gets like even for us, even for me, I mean, this is like, okay, what am I supposed to learn about it this week? And that's where you do a little research, either online, or you go to the Bet Midrash, the Jewish library. You look into some books, and you get. So speaking of that, this week's parsha is Vayikra, the first one, like I said, and it's really interesting because straight away it starts talking about um, korbanot, right? Sacrifices,
Yeah.
and like you said, like, oh my gosh, barbaric stuff, right? It's like, I mean, if you walked into the Beit Hamikdash, into the holy temple of old, there's like they're chopping up cows, and definitely Peter wouldn't have been happy with it.
No.
But like, what's all this stuff for?
Yeah.
I wanted to hear your perspective on that.
Listen, that's a really good question, and I just think it's pretty crazy that like I came to you and I told you I wanted to do this podcast, and
Yeah.
I asked you to do it with me, and we talked about a lot of just like recently, like about a lot of what the reason behind it is, and I just think it's crazy that like we're sitting here and we're like literally going right into it, like right
Yeah.
in the heart of the
We're just
beast.
jumping in.
We're
Yeah.
like literally jumping
Talking
in, like
about
we're
juicy
talking about,
topics. We're talking
yeah,
about PETA.
yeah. No, we're going straight into it, and this is one of those topics of
Yeah, this is
like
a very juicy topic,
what,
very controversial. You may even say very controversial topic, right? Sacrifices.
for sure, controversial, and in two regards. One, like you said, like, well, first in the regard of like killing animals, and then two in the regard of like what can you possibly learn from this?
Right.
Like, is there even something to learn?
Yeah.
I mean, we're literally going right into it. It's pretty crazy, but
So I want you to
yeah,
talk about korbanot, the sacrifices, for a little bit, and then I'll give my 2 cents about ritual slaughter, and as we call it, shchita, right?
yeah.
So go ahead. I'll take over when you're.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like I have to say, like, not an expert on this at all.
No, we're neither of us are
Yeah.
qualified. No, we're just here talking.
But okay, I mean, I read something very interesting last night, researching the topic, and so like I just kind of like it was just interesting because like the person was, and I'll tell you it was Avi Geller. I was reading an article by Avi Geller. It's called "How Animal Offerings Help Us Tap into the Divine Presence."
Okay.
And I just think that it's so interesting because we even I feel like an observant Jew sitting down reading the Torah, and specifically like this part, it's so surface level, like, oh, you take an animal, you bring it to the temple, and you sacrifice it.
Right.
And surface level, you're like, okay. And even I feel like an observant Jew could just gloss over that.
Yeah. Like, what did you do already?
But then, like, go into it. Just imagine, like, this person, okay, is taking, first of all,
Well, there's so many korbanot. Like, what's he coming for?
okay, yeah. So let's say, like, the sin offering.
Yeah.
There's, like, the sin offering. What's the
Chatat.
Chatat with a T? Okay, yeah. So
Or if you're
chatat.
Ashkenazi, chatas.
Chatas. Yes, we don't discriminate here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So, but just imagine like these, and like shepherding, farming, like this is literally the basis of these people's livelihood.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then excuse me.
I mean, historically, all the the Jews were all shepherds, right? Look at, I mean, we can start going backwards, right? Moses, shepherd, right? He was shepherding his father-in-law stuff.
Yeah.
Right. when all the brothers come to Yosef. I'm going backwards. When all the brothers come to Yosef, right, when he was the like almost king of Mitzrayim, he's like, tell Paro, right, you guys are all shepherds.
Yeah.
Right. When Yaakov tells Yosef, go check on your brothers, what are they doing? Right, they're shepherding. Yaakov, shepherd. Yitzchak, shepherd. Avram, shepherd.
Yeah.
Everyone was taking care of the animals.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, I'm interrupting you, but like this is like one of those things. Like, what are you gonna? Like, who cares, man? They're all shepherds. Like Shkoyach, Hazal Baruch. They're all shepherds. What do I care? Right.
Yeah.
One of the simple lessons that we're learning from these shepherds, if you want to be in charge of the masses, right? If you want to have a place of responsibility, you have to start from the bottom, right? Animals, they need care. They need tender love and care,
Yeah.
right? We call it, right? They need TLC. You have a little animal, little shepselach, little sheep, right? You saw Moshe Rabbeinu. He ran after this little sheep. One sheep. Let the sheep go. Who cares? Let the sheep go and die in the wilderness. Let them get eaten by coyote. Every single sheep counts, right? And then and that's how you got the greatest leader of the Jewish nation. Such a simple, small idea you get straight from, and that's exactly, the Torah teaches that.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, yeah, taking it back to that, it's incredible, like you said, that literally, I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that was like what was the turning point for Moses.
For Moshe. Yeah, for Moses. Yeah.
Where God was like, look at the way.
Look at how he cared for this little sheep. He ran after the one sheep. Now, imagine this. There's a farmer in the land of Israel. He's raising his sheep, right? Now, this is going back to you. And then the guy did a sin offering. Excuse me. And he's like, I want your sheep now to take it to the temple, right? Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, I just think it's crazy to like paint the picture. Imagine like these animals are your livelihood,
Yeah.
you know, and you are going and you're taking the choicest of your flock.
Yeah.
Okay. And just like put yourself in that person's shoes. Imagine like you had to take your Bentley and like sacrifice it, or like, you know what I mean? Like offer and be like, you know what? Like, I'm going to like get rid of this. So
not recommended, kids.
Yeah. So like, I'm just thinking about it from like putting yourself in their shoes, where you go and you take the choicest of your flock,
Yeah.
right? And here's where I feel like is the turning point. It's about the intent, you know? It's about the intent in the sense of like, if you're taking this animal and it's not easy for you, first of all, one, because of its value to you, okay?
Yeah.
Two, because
that's good steak.
Yeah. Two, who wants to kill an animal? Like,
no.
I don't think that's like an enjoyable experience, and I don't think it's meant to be. No. Like, I think that a perspective is that like the uncomfortability is part of like the meaning behind it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But like, yeah, like really ultimately, I feel like the intent, and this was like according to what Avi Geller was writing about, was that he wrote that like pretty much you had to feel as though it was your own flesh and blood that really deserved to be offered, and God should accept this animal as a quote unquote meager substitute for himself.
Because like, imagine, dude, you're bringing this cow, you're dragging, or sheep or whatever, you're dragging this guy up to the temple, yeah, and then you watch it, right? You watch it getting slaughtered and chopped up, and you know, you're like, damn, I really messed up. This, you know, could have, should have been my, you know, my soul. I messed up. You did a wrong thing. Not all sacrifices are for wrongdoings. You know, I'll just put that in. Right? You know that, right? If a lady has a baby, mazal tov, you go make a korban. Thank you, Hashem. Right? There's countless. Even when you come up for the holidays, right? You bring several sacrifices. Thank you, Hashem. I came to live another another year. So I just put this in, even though we are specifically talking about the sin offering, but nevertheless, there are plenty of other offerings. But yeah, the guy did something wrong, and now he has to drag this sheep, and he has to watch this happening to him, right?
Yeah.
And it's supposed to like get him worked up, get him thinking. It's not all just like, okay, bring this cow and slice its throat, and which I do want to talk about, right? All this. I happen to be certified for shchita, right? Kosher ritual slaughter for chickens. I remember, dude, the the day that I was supposed to get the test, right? To get the test, there's like you have to check that the knife has no nicks, right? There's a special knife for shchita.
Can you explain why that's the case? Why it
Yeah,
doesn't have
dude,
to have any nicks?
because people make this like big hoop to do, like, oh my gosh, you guys are slaughtering these like, just even forget the temple for a second. Rituals, right? You're doing shita to make a kosher chicken. You are making such giving the animal so much pain, and it's so traumatic, and it's okay. So I'll go through how many steps Judaism goes through just to make the animal feel as little pain as possible. So first step is the knife. It's a knife, chicken knife is about this big. It's usually rectangular just so that it looks different than any other random kitchen knife. It has to look different so you don't mix them up and whatever. Fine. So this knife has to pass a couple of tests. It has to be smoothed out on a sharpening stone, right? You can't just sharpen a kitchen sharpener. And this knife has to have zero nicks. You feel it on your fingernail, and it has to be smooth. Zero nicks. Not even it has no serrations, not even microscopic serrations. If it does, the animal is not kosher. Finished. End of that. And it's so darn sharp. My rabbi Rabbi Sterling was telling me a story. He had a friend that was sharpening his cow knife. Cow knife, by the way, are like this big, right? It has to be because the cow is much bigger. So he was sharpening his cow knife, and then he was done, nice and sharp, ready to go. He was going to put it in the case. So he's going to put it in the case, and it slips, and it just grazes his thigh. Doesn't feel a thing. He looks down, blood. He goes to the hospital. I don't remember how many, like 43, 48 stitches this guy needed down his leg.
Whoa.
Can you believe that?
Wow.
So the knife, that's number one. The knife is extremely sharp. You do as fun, and not fun, but to test the sharpness. What I've done in the past, you take it to, like even a tomato. I hold the knife with 2 fingers, and I just go like this. That's the sound. It makes it's so sharp.
Wow.
That's the knife. First of all. Second of all, there's a specific area we cut on the chicken. I'm not going to show myself, but right there's the windpipe and the food pipe, right? Now in kosher animals, well, actually it's different. Some animals have it, straight behind the other. Some of them are one beside the other. It's different different ways that they are. So there's those 2 pipes, and then there's 2 other very important items in the animal's throats, which are, I'm sorry, this is getting a little graphic, yeah.
No.
But there's also the extremely important arteries that go straight to the brain. Okay. So first of all,
Are we still talking about chickens right now?
chickens.
So chickens also have
this-
arteries that go straight to the brain?
Yeah.
Really? Oh, I thought that was only cows.
Cows.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Sheep. Dogs have one here and one here. Pigs, they have one artery here, one blood artery here. I'm getting there. Wait.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So listen, that's the crazy thing. So when you're doing shechita on a kosher animal, right? First of all, it takes literally 2 seconds. 1, 2. It's done. The animal is dead. Well, how do I know? I just chopped off any blood flow to the brain.
Yeah.
there's no blood going to the brain. First of all, blood loss, it passes out.
Do you know how in the United States and I guess like most Western countries they
Nail gun.
worse than a nail gun. It's like a bolt
Yeah,
that
bolt.
they
Yeah.
like. It's not even a nail. It's like a bolt that they shoot into their head, and it's supposed to quote unquote like. I mean, the animal's still alive.
Yeah.
It's supposed to like cease their brain from like function, but they've done like. I could be totally wrong on this. I did research this a long time ago, but and I mean if you want to look it up, you can. But I'm pretty sure they've done like EKG. Is that the right? I don't know if that's the right term, but they did like studies to like study the like electrical activity in their body, and it's still going on.
No way.
Yeah, and so it's just the level of care to slaughter an animal in Judaism like is insane, which is like pretty much what you're explaining right now.
Yeah. And that's really the second thing, which is the knife. So like this animal, first of all, like I said, once you do shechita on a chicken, for example, it passes out from blood loss. Then it feels nothing. It's knocked out. Then within a couple seconds, there's no more blood going to the brain. Dude, the thing is dead.
Yeah.
And not only that, the knife is so sharp you didn't feel anything. Right?
Yeah.
Imagine that. We're going through so many steps just so this animal doesn't feel any pain.
That's why you explained how the rabbi who cut his leg didn't even feel it.
He didn't.
So
Feel,
that's
yeah, that's what I'm
I
saying.
see. Okay. Yeah.
You just look down and there's gushing blood.
That's wild.
And and that and that's why every kosher animal, if you look at dogs, if you look at pigs, horses, they all have one blood artery going under the neck, and they have another one. It splits somewhere around the stomach. I don't remember. Maybe I'll try to find a diagram later. But do you have the book Revolution, Coming Revolution?
I don't think I do.
Okay, never mind then. That's okay. But that's where I'm going with this. With this shechita, right? It's so quick, it's so smooth, it's so sharp. The animal is dead in a couple seconds. Felt basically no pain. I've cut myself so many times, testing the knife just to see for the nicks, like I mentioned, and all of a sudden I like feel, it's like it's kind of like white hot. I don't know. It's like barely, and you see like, oh, I cut myself a little bit.
Wow.
But like besides, and that's because I'm still conscious, But like if I was doing that to a pig or a horse, dude, they still have blood going to the brain.
Wow.
If I would cut them from the front.
Wow.
And that's the amazing thing that do you believe the Torah teaches that?
I love how you're really driving home the title. Like, it's really like...
That's the truth. The Torah teaches that. This is straight, this is straight Judaism.
Yeah. I mean,
and people make it seem like, people, it's crazy that people seem to make it like a barbaric act.
Yeah. I mean, because to this day, we're killing animals to eat them, which like whether you feel that's like the right thing or not is a whole nother discussion. But as far as like to eat them, which many of these sacrifices, like you eat them also, right?
Yeah, plenty of them were eaten.
But yeah, like
most of them were eaten.
Yeah.
Only some of them went, totally for as like a completely burnt offering to Hashem.
Yeah. So, what pretty much like if you're going to kill an animal, like let's do it in the most humane way possible.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is indisputably the goal.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So yeah, I mean, going back to making this sacrifice, I was reading about like, okay, so let's talk about like a little bit like, okay, like this sin offering, like this concept of sin. Sin.
Yeah, it's good.
Like it's crazy because we're really just going for it like right off the bat, and it wasn't even like planned.
No.
But I mean, this concept of sin, like there's there's this idea that sin is like, oh, I am like, if I sinned, I'm doing something that's like horrible in the eyes of God, which I think like is true.
Mm-hmm.
But I also want to touch on like, it's not so much that these concepts of sin are, well, not that it's not so much, let me rephrase that, that a good portion, I don't know how much, I'm not qualified to say, I feel like a good portion of a sin, quote unquote, is because we are doing a disservice to ourselves. And this doesn't have to be like a disservice in terms of like um, punishment, a disservice in terms of like these things that like we're told not to do, quote unquote, like are things that if we do them, they diminish our happiness. They diminish our ability to live life in the best way possible, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's another thing that, like, listen, like, how I don't care who you are, we all want to live our lives in a better way. We all feel like there are ways we can improve the way we live our life. Just in terms of like things we said, like relationships, goals, purpose, drive, um, things that like we feel like we're not living up to our like own personal standards. Like these are all universal things. I don't know a single person
No, no.
who doesn't have that, you know? And so these things that like we're told not to do are really for us. But let's just like, I feel like we can even like put that aside for a second. Say like let's really like take it from that perspective of like, don't even look at it from a perspective of like, oh, I did something that like is completely horrible for God, and so like now I need to like self-inflict pain
No,
on
not at all.
myself.
I'll even I'll add on to what you're saying. A lot of times, if you want to understand something, right, especially when you're taking it from, uh, in this case, right, the word that we're looking for is sin, which is kind of loosely translated if you're taking it from Hebrew,
That's also another really good point.
right? And if we like kind of like zoom out, let's look because
Can we touch on that for a second?
yeah,
Because I feel like a lot of words are mistranslated,
for sure.
and sometimes it's like baffles me. Just like words that are used so often in the context of Judaism, and then like you learn that this word like really has like a whole different meaning than like the translation that we've come to like understand what it means.
Yeah.
And I feel like you see this so many times. But yeah, so anyway, like one of the things that I was saying was, okay, like forget about like, oh, I did something horrible in the eyes of God. Just think that you did something that you know wasn't to your standard.
Okay.
Wasn't to, you know, there are certain things that you know you shouldn't do. You know that like aren't good for you or aren't good for a relationship, or treating others. Like that is universal to everyone. Like nobody can doubt that. So then just like going so then just going back to what we were talking about as far as like the offerings, like imagine you are coming, you're bringing this offering, okay, and you're saying like, i something I did something that I know was not to the standard that I know I could have been, right? And then so I the reason I'm saying all of this is to say that like you can look at the sacrifice, forget about whether like you think like it's okay or not to do something like that and what the point of it is. Like we can talk about that a little bit more later on, to the best of my ability at least. But just imagine that you are doing like there's an argument to be made that the reason you're making the sacrifice is
Yeah.
for you to learn something from this, for you to learn something from the experience. Because let's be real, who in their right mind will like brings a cow also like in the context of sacrificing it for God and is like, yo, like I'm having the best time. This
No.
is the most enjoyable experience. Like I love to bring like my choicest cow and
Yeah.
slaughter its throat and like do this for God and like whatever. Like it's like that is not like I can't imagine. I
Yeah.
can't imagine that that's the process. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like if you if you shift your perspective on these certain things, but really ultimately the reason we're even talking about all these things is to say like what can we learn from this for our lives personally, you know? And so one of the things that I was reading about was that the animal slaughter teaches that we have to symbolically slaughter the animal side of ourselves, um, and
Oh.
which is like that's a lot
Yeah.
that needs to like be unpacked, you know.
Yeah.
But I feel like another thing that like was talked about was that um, talked about how at one point God was upset at the time of the temple's destruction that many Jews were quote unquote paying lip service with their offerings.
Mm-hmm.
And God told the prophet, do you know which one it was? I'm not 100% sure.
No, I don't
Okay.
remember.
Well, anyway, so he told the prophet, do I need the fat of their rams?
Right.
I.e., if an offering is insincere, then it is only a waste of the poor animal, you know? And so I just think that like if you look at it from the perspective of like this is this is my this is like supposed to like this slaughtering is not for nothing. This slaughtering is not for like, oh, I'm just wild and I like to just slaughter animals, and like God is this like um being that feels like we should just slaughter animals because like this is what barbaric people do. there's there's something to be learned from this, and I'm not advocating that like in the 21st century like we should be slaughtering animals. Like I'm just saying like there's something to be learned from this, something to be taken, that like if you see it from the perspective that like okay, like I did something wrong, I know like I realize, I recognize that I that this serves a purpose for me, that like this this sacrifice like is not just for just some crazy purpose, but i am I am learning something about life from doing this. Because let's be real, at the end of the day, like we as humans have a lot more to offer. We as humans have a lot more to contribute. And so when you see it from that perspective, if you like recognize that slaughtering this animal is teaching you something about life,
Yeah.
you know, that that life is precious, I can do better.
They didn't have to kill this cow.
Yeah, like I did, yeah, exactly, I didn't have to kill this cow. I mean, like I don't know, this is tough. I like this is some of this is even like beyond my pay grade.
So
But
I want to just go back. I'm going to put something on the screen really quickly
yeah,
because I want to talk about this. Check this out. Going back on the definition of uh, of chet, of sin, right? Before we look at the screen,
yeah,
I'm going to explain to you. We think, right, chet in Hebrew means sin. I did a chet. You did a sin. So there's a pasuk that's on the screen
what's
that's going
a
to
what's a pasuk for
a
the people
pasuk
that
is a
don't know?
verse from
Okay,
from it's part of Tanakh. Okay, it's part of the prophets.
so
From
Tanakh
from Tanakh is
is
like the overarching, right, Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim, right, Torah from Hashem, from the five books of
five
Moses,
books of Moses,
and then Nevi'im, which is all the prophets, and
prophets.
then later on is the Ketuvim, which have parts of Megillat Esther that we were on Purim, and different works of Shlomo HaMelech or Shir HaShirim and Tehillim and other works like this. So as part of in Judges, right, which is Malachim, it talks about different kings of Israel and whatever. So as part of I don't remember which king's army, it says like this. I have the pasuk over here, so we have it just a little better. Check this out. The pasuk says, "Mikol ha'am hazeh," this is the nation, right? All of his force. Sheva meot ish, there were 7 handpicked men. Iteria, they were yamino, they were left-handed. Kol zeh koleh ba'avim. Al hasara, they could sling a stone. But look at this. This is the crazy, the highlighted. Velo yachati, and what? And they don't sin. That's not the translation. The translation is they don't miss. Yachati, the same thing. Chet, right?
Okay.
So chet doesn't mean I sinned. It means I missed an opportunity. God gave me an opportunity in front of me to grow, to go above, right? Someone says when you put the, what's the thing the horses jump over, right? When you put the I forgot what it's called. But when you put the stakes higher, you got to jump higher, right? And imagine, right? You're trying to shoot an arrow, and you missed your mark. You missed your focus. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's not so much, right? We have this focus. We want to get closer to God. We want to have our happiness, right? If the guy is going for his happiness and he does something contrary to that, so you maybe in English you might call that a sin, right? But you clearly see you missed something. You missed an opportunity to get closer. You missed your focus. And that's where a lot of people can find like comfort in that, because you say, look, okay, and it's not that I did an avo and I made a thing, I tear my hair out and all that all that stuff. I missed an opportunity. Next time I'll do better. I'm gonna try to stay focused next time.
Yeah. And actually, like going off of what you were saying, I think that to add just like to this whole discussion, I was just reading about how, and this was a writing from Rabbi Dr. Mordechai Schiffman, and he was talking about how one of the chatat, which we're talking about, it's brought for sins committed unintentionally.
Okay.
Which is kind of wild, like an unintentional sin, something you didn't even do intentionally. And this is something that we could all take like in our lives, the explanation that he gives. And he talks about how perhaps one of the goals of these sacrifices is, quote, to create psychological safety for sin and failure. Whereas we should not, the institution of sacrifices balances the normalization of sin with responsibility and accountability. Try and detect all levels of failure, intentional and unintentional. And I just think
it's kind of like a perfecting the human.
I think really what it is reflection, which is one of the things that like you can add on to what we were talking about earlier of like why doing this is also for you, and why it's something that we can learn and apply to our own lives. Because like imagine, like we all do things that are unintentionally not for our benefit, not for our best, right? Yeah. But imagine, like, what do you have to do to realize that? You have to sit and you have to reflect. You have to sit at the end of your day and be like, what could I have done better? Where did I miss the mark?
Where did I miss it?
And so like imagine we did that every day.
Yeah.
Imagine we sat and we're like, where did I miss the mark? Where could I have done better? Where could I have um, spent my time better? Where could I have um, done like treated like my wife or my friends or
Whoever.
my coworkers
Right.
better? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
how did I miss the mark on like a goal that I'm trying to accomplish? Whether it's like exercising more or like your studies or like in work or learning a new instrument, like reflecting.
Are you learning
Like,
a new instrument?
am I learning a new instrument? I am not learning a new instrument.
Oh.
I stopped playing instruments in like 10 and like 11th grade. Stopped playing instruments. I used to play piano until I played piano for like 6 years until I was like 13 or 14.
So you can probably still play something.
The only thing I could play is
Happy
I'm gonna
birthday to you.
no, no. I'm gonna butcher the name, but for Elise, that's the only thing I could still play. And the crazy thing is that that's the only song that I taught myself.
So why didn't? So why?
But it just goes to show that like when your passion like is in something,
Oh yeah.
like it's like from your own volition. Not that I didn't enjoy playing piano, but like I didn't pick like 95% of the songs that like
Was a teacher?
I had a teacher, and so it just really goes to show. And I also remember I was like so excited to like show my piano teacher that like I taught this song myself, and I was like, I play this so well, like this is crazy. And then I played it for her, and she's like,
Okay.
that was really good. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, didn't I play it like perfectly? And she's like, well, like, you kind of didn't play it like on time and like whatever, and like some of the like things they weren't perfect and whatever.
Okay.
And so like that stuck with me.
Okay.
But yeah, so I also played clarinet too in middle
Yeah?
school and for the first half of high school. Yeah. We can't get into the story because to this day my dad will ran because my dad when I went to play clarinet when I joined band in middle school to play clarinet, he was like really proud of me for doing it. And like we didn't always like do super well like financially, so he like went to Sam Ash Music to like explore the options.
That on Westwood?
It's on Sunset. I don't know if it's still there, but it was like across the street from the Guitar Center on Sunset.
Okay.
And we were looking at like our options, and there were like some like really cheap clarinets. Like there was an option to like rent, and there was like a really good Yamaha clarinet, and it was like kind of out of our budget. But my dad was like, you know what? Like I want the best for my son. Like I'm really proud of him. Like he's doing this. So he got that for me, right? And I remember like after like 10th grade ended or something like that, I left my clarinet in the band room for like the whole summer. And then when summer like ended,
Oh no.
I went back to get it and it wasn't there anymore. And to this day, my dad will like randomly be like, "Hey, if you lost that clarinet," like to this day.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. But yeah, for our non-Persian listeners, "Haif" means what a shame.
Shame it is, my man.
I still hear it to this day. So you're opening some wounds.
Sorry.
So,
Let's close that. Okay.
Where were we? Yeah. What were we even talking about?
So now I want to just jump back quickly.
Yeah.
Let's jump to the beginning of the parsha.
Okay.
Right? This week's Torah portion, Vayikra. All right. I'm gonna pull up this on the screen for you, Kiya, so you can see this. Okay.
Really quickly before we dive into this.
Yeah.
What can you give like our listeners just like a general, like even just like a general understanding of like what this week's parsha covers?
Okay. So honestly, this week's parsha, like so far, we discussed a lot of it, and it's really just talking about a lot of sacrifices.
Yeah.
Different ones like chatat, sin offering, ola, the ones that are going up to Hashem. It talks about different types of bread, items they had. The baked ones, the fried ones, the different things that they were offering. Um, and it's kind of just been a lot of all that.
So it's pretty much just like talking about all offerings, and this is the first parsha of like the new
Of the new book,
of the new
yeah.
book, right?
Yeah. So like I mean, and then there's different parts. Like for example, there's a chatat that the Kohen Gadol, like the high priest, brings in certain circumstances, and there's some that I don't want to get too much into the details, but if there's like a communal mistake in the ruling or whatever, right? Then they bring a certain one, and then there's different guilt offerings and
Okay, so it's pretty much all talking about
I don't want to
offerings.
bore you. I don't want
No,
to
no,
bore you
no.
with all this stuff. So
Okay.
let me pull this up for you right now on the screen so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay. So you see, we're gonna open up straight into the parsha. You see the highlighted word Vayikra al Moshe Vayidaber Adonai elav be'ol hamod lemor.
Yeah.
Hashem called to Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meeting, saying, and then I didn't quote the rest of the pasuk. That's we're going to focus on the first letter. You see that aleph, right?
And this is the very opening of the parsha.
That's the first word.
Yeah, the first sentence.
Now you might think, hey, Shmuel, that aleph is a mistake, right?
One would think, yeah.
Yeah, one would think that that's a mistake.
Okay.
Okay. Give me a second.
No worries.
All right. I just want to fix this. Okay. Yeah. So you might think that this was a typo.
How it's like written smaller than the rest
you messed
of the...
up on the olive, right? You
Okay.
fixed that. Put that back in the 18 font like everything else.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, you gotta listen to this. This is exactly how it's written. And when you open up this, the Torah, it's gonna be written small also.
Okay.
So you're like, okay, what's going on here? What are you writing small letters for?
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell you a profound lesson from one little olive, and you're going to be like, and you're going to understand. So Moses was writing the Torah, and you can see, right? Hashem is telling him what to write. It wasn't Moses' didn't come up with it. Straight from God's mouth, right? Straight onto Moshe's pen, and he wrote it, right?
Yeah.
So he tells him to write like this. Vayikra al Moshe, and he called upon Moshe, right?
Yeah.
So Moses, he's a very humble guy. The exact pasuk exactly says Moshe was the most humble man that walked the earth.
Yeah.
He was. Right? Even in last week's parsha, there was a really funny example that when he wanted to go pray on behalf of the Jews, when after they did the sin of the golden calf, he wanted to pray for them, right? God was like, I'm gonna wipe them out. Start over with Moshe. Excuse me. Moses was like, no. Please God, let them live. Why? Why do you have to let them live? And you have to answer my prayer. Moses says. So hold on. Moses telling God, you have to answer my prayer. What kind of a joke is that? Moses is, you'd be like, a haughty guy. You have to answer my prayer. I'm Moses, right? So there's a profound lesson in humility that Moshe Rabbeinu teaches us. He was saying, look, God, I'm a very lone guy, right? There's Moshe Rabbeinu says upon himself, he's like, I'm nothing, right? Abraham, our forefather, says, I'm like the dirt. David, the king, he says, I'm like a little worm. Moshe, he said, I'm nothing. Not even a worm, not even dirt. Nothing. Humility to the max. So he says, God, if you're not going to answer me, what's all the other people going to say when they pray to you?
Me who's nothing.
Me who's nothing. They're going to say, look, Moses who's nothing. He's saying this upon himself. Of course, we know he's the greatest prophet that ever lived. The greatest human to walk the earth. But he's going to say that he's saying that what are the Jews going to say? They're going to say, look at Moses, that God didn't. They're going to think that there's nobody to answer. They're going to say, how can we be answered? He was such a humble guy that he didn't even think of himself like, oh, I'm the biggest guy. Like, of course you're gonna answer me. So that's exactly what this small olive right here is teaching us. Moses came and he wrote a little olive in the Torah.
Well, I think you should explain. Yeah. Okay.
And that's exactly what I'm going to bring a comparison.
Yeah. So explain like what happens when you make the olive small.
Yeah,
versus.
I'll explain to you.
Yeah.
So it's when it's small, we can kind of like pretend like we ignore it. It's there. We can like pretend like we ignore it. So how would it be read? You can read it Vayikra.
Okay.
Which means happened upon.
Okay.
So Moshe is like kind of like, because look, by the next pasuk that I quote right here, it says Vayikar Elohim el Bilam vayomer elav et shivat hamizbachot arachti va'al par va'al. This is talking about Bilam, right? Bilam was the evil, let's say, prophet of the Midianites, right? Okay. And they had a whole plan. They wanted to curse the Jews, and it turned into Bilam actually telling many blessings upon the Jews, which is, shows the hand of Hashem. The Jews didn't know anything about it, right? They were sitting in their tents, and Bilam and Balak, right, the king and the magician, or you can call them, and the prophet, right, the king and the prophet were up on the mountains trying to curse them, and the Jews are sitting there in the valley chilling, like, and they didn't know anything about it. And God is behind the scenes stopping all these curses. So God writes about Bilam that if you see, God became manifest to Bilam. He happened upon Bilam. So Moshe is like, I'm nothing. God happened upon me, right? It's not saying Vayikra el Moshe, that God called upon Moshe as if specifically to Moshe, that he cares about him, and he happened upon me.
Yeah.
We're seeing such a profound thing of humility straight from this one little letter.
So pretty much like God told him, because like God told him what to write, and so God told him to write Vayikra, which means God called to Moses, whereas with Bilam he wrote Vayikar, which happened upon Moses.
Yeah.
And Moses like realized that he has to write Vayikra, which means called upon.
Mm-hmm.
But in his humility, he wrote the olive smaller, so like you kind of like want to ignore it.
Yeah.
So it kind of like could be read as Vayikar,
mm-hmm.
because he didn't want to like come across as like haughty, that like God.
Not so much he didn't want to come across as haughty. You wouldn't have thought it. He wanted to come across as he was. He's humble. He's not trying to
So in his humility he wrote
He's like what am I? Like, what do you mean God called him?
Yeah. So he wrote it smaller.
Yeah.
To like show his humility.
Yeah. And I think that's a good place to keep it. I mean, if you have anything else anything else to talk about.
No, I mean, no, I don't. And yeah, I think it's a good place to go with it too. I guess like on that note, like I really think that like, yeah, like we really want to just like talk about things like that. Like we don't want to just like talk for the sake of talking.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's one.
I'm not a man for words myself.
Yeah, and I don't think I could say that about myself. but I think so far like this is a productive conversation.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you're a great guy to talk to. So we'll let's leave it at that, and we'll carry on next episode.
Okay, sounds good. Bye everyone. Okay. Peace.